The Turkish Land Forces, or Turkish Army, is the main branch of the Turkish armed forces responsible for land-based military operations. The army was formed on November 8, 1920, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Significant campaigns since the foundation of the army include suppression of rebellions in southeastern Turkey from the 1920s to the present day, combat in the Korean War, the 1974 Turkish invasion of Cyprus and the current Turkish involvement in the Syrian civil war, as well as its NATO alliance against the USSR during the Cold War. The army holds the preeminent place within the armed forces. It is customary for the Chief of the General Staff of the Turkish Armed Forces to have been the commander of the Turkish Land Forces prior to his appointment as Turkey's senior ranking officer. Alongside the other two armed services, the Turkish army has frequently intervened in Turkish politics, a custom that is now regulated to an extent by the reform of the National Security Council. The current commander of the Turkish Land Forces is General Umit Dunda. From late 2015, the Turkish army saw its personnel strengths increase to a similar level as the previous decade. Factors that contributed to this growth include the Turkish occupation of northern Syria, as well as a renewal of the Kurdish-Turkish conflict. The Turkish army traces its origin to the Ottoman army. A theory accepted officially was that the Ottoman armed forces had been founded in 1363, when the Pençik Corps had been formed in this context, on the 28th of June 1963, it celebrated the 600th anniversary of its foundation. In the same year, one of the prominent Pan-Turanists, Nihal Atsiz, asserted that the Turkish army had been founded in 209 BC, when Meet Khan of the Xiongnu is thought to have formed an army based on the decimal system. In 1968, Yilmaz Öztürk proposed this theory to Samul Tarol, who was the chief of the General Staff of the Republic of Turkey at the time. In 1973, when the Turkish army celebrated the 610th anniversary of its foundation, Nihal Atsiz published his claim again. After the 1980 Turkish coup d'état, the Turkish army formally adopted the date 209 BC as its year of foundation. The modern Turkish army has its foundations in 9 remnant Ottoman army corps after the armistice of Mudros at the end of World War I. After the rise of Turkish resistances instead of irregular troops, commanders of the Turkish army during the Turkish War of Independence, Turkish soldiers in a trench, waiting for the order to attack with fixed bayonets on their rifles on August 26, 1922. The Army of the Grand National Assembly on September 9, 1922. Sukru Nili Pasha's 3rd Corps entered Constantinople peacefully on October 6, 1923. Subsequently to the founding of the Republic of Turkey, the army of the GNA was reorganized into 3 army inspectorates. Marshal Kemal Atatürk as the supreme commander of the Turkish armed forces, Marshal Fevzi Çakmak, who, together with Atatürk, commanded the Great Offensive in 1922. General Kazim Karabekir was the commander of the 15th Corps. General Fahrettin Altay was the commander of the 5th Cavalry Corps. There were several Kurdish rebellions in southeastern Turkey in the 1920s and 1930s. The most important of which were the 1925 Sheikh Said Rebellion and the 1937 Dersim Rebellion. All were suppressed by the TAF, sometimes involving large-scale mobilizations of up to 50,000 troops. Associated atrocities against civilians include the Zilan massacre. In 1935, Turkey purchased 60 T-26 Mod 1933 light tanks from the USSR, along with about 60 BA-6 armored cars to form the 1st Tank Battalion of the 2nd Cavalry Division. At Lüleburgaz, the armored brigade of the Turkish army consisted of the 102nd and the 103rd companies armed with the T-26 Mod 1933 tanks. At the end of 1937, the reserve group of the brigade had 21 T-26 tanks also. At the beginning of 1940, the Turkish army had the armored brigade in Istanbul, which belonged to the 1st Army, and the 1st Tank Battalion, which belonged to the 3rd Army. Turkish T-26 tanks were taken out of service in 1942. During World War II, Turkey mobilized more than 1 million personnel. The Turkish Army Order of Battle in 1941 shows a number of formations. Neutral for most of the war, Turkey declared war on Nazi Germany in February 1945. After being given an ultimatum by the Allies of World War II to do so by March 1, 1945. If Turkey wanted a seat in the future United Nations. Note the command of the Turkish army was formed on July 1, 1949, and Nuri Yamurt was appointed as the first commander of the Turkish army. The Turkish army participated in the Korean War as a member state of the United Nations. Of the 5,000 soldiers of the Turkish brigade there, 731 were killed. They fought in the Battle of Hwawong, where it was credited with saving the U.S. 2nd Infantry Division from encirclement. The brigade also fought at Gimnyangjungni, Operation Ripper, or the Fourth Battle of Seoul, and